Hello everyone and welcome to this Facebook Live event. I am John Smith, the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. The PCC and the Chief Constable are both away at the moment, having a well-earned break. So I'm joined today by Deputy Chief Constable Sarah Crew. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, John.
We are doing this event over Microsoft Teams. Unfortunately, a family member of mine has tested positive for the virus, so I'm self-isolating at home. I'm happy to tell you all, though, that my family are all well and there's nothing to worry about. It has been a worrying time in general, however, with cases increasing across the area, especially in Bristol. We do need to ensure that we are all following the government advice to prevent any further rise and to look after ourselves and to look out for each other as well. Sarah, is there anything you would like to add before we start with the questions?
I think I'd just like to say good afternoon, everyone. We are fortunate that the number of COVID-19 cases in the southwest up to now haven't been as high as some other parts of the UK. But as you point out, John, numbers are rising fast now, and we certainly can't afford to be complacent. Our officers are out there every day engaging with members of the public, explaining the regulations, encouraging people to take responsibility for protecting themselves and others, with enforcement as the final resort. But we're now 7 months into this pandemic, and officers are issuing fixed penalty notices when people refuse to comply or flagrantly breach the regulations. But we are grateful to the overwhelming majority of people who recognise the seriousness of the situation and are playing their part by complying with the restrictions. We want to continue like this, working with our communities over what is likely to be now a testing few months for everyone.
Yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it? OK, thank you, Sarah. The first question is actually about the enforcement arrangements. So Avon and Somerset Police have been awarded over £680,000 funding by the government to support coronavirus restrictions and to help prevent further transmission. Sarah, could you tell us about how the police are planning to spend the money and the plans for enforcement, please?
OK, one of the greatest challenges facing Avon and Somerset Police, and I think many other police forces across the country, is having the resources available to cope with our usual workload as well as the additional workload generated by COVID-19. So back in the spring, the national lockdown meant that our demand for non-COVID police matters really dropped. This freed up our resources so we could have more officers out on the streets working with our communities to help defeat the virus. But 6 months on, the situation is very different. Demand for police attendance has increased to pre-lockdown levels. But we also need to be out ensuring people are adhering to the COVID-19 regulations and dealing with breaches too. So officers and staff have responded magnificently so far, giving up their own time and cancelling leave on occasion to help us meet the challenge head on. But to cope with the demand and in anticipation of any changes in restrictions going forward, we've now established a dedicated COVID-19 team to attend reports of breaches of the emergency regulations. Now, this team is being created from that extra funding that you mentioned, John, provided by the government to support the COVID-19 response. Now, we will have those dedicated resources in our control room and in our communities across the whole force area, and they'll be able to respond to breaches reported to the police, whether that's online or via 101. And our teams will be doing this 7 days a week. But it will also help us to react more quickly to incidents called in by the police, but also to patrol areas that are highlighted by our partner agencies, such as the local authorities, and by our own intelligence picture of what's going on. So anything people report to us, we will be feeding into that patrol plan. So the 680,000 awarded to us by the government will also enable us to be highly visible in our communities. So we have some new vehicles with distinctive livery, and some officers and police and crime support officers are being equipped with electric bikes so they can be really visible, but also accessible when out on patrol.
OK, excellent. You've talked about the officers and staff out doing their day-to-day work as well. Officers and staff are, of course, by no means immune from the virus themselves. Can you talk about what the senior leadership team have been doing to support the officers and staff as they've gone out to work and put themselves at risk?
Yeah, we actually pride ourselves on being a caring organisation. It's one of our values. So protecting the well-being of the 6,500 people who work for us is one of our greatest responsibilities as a senior leadership team. It's been an immensely busy time for our officers and staff, and I'd like to take this opportunity, if I can, to pay tribute to their dedication and their hard work in responding to both policing a pandemic and business as usual in recent months. As an employer, we have, like many others, worked hard to make all our workplaces COVID safe, and everyone within the organisation is expected to maintain social distance. Many staff are working from home to ensure that we free additional space in our buildings and appropriate distance for those who do have to remain on site. We ask our officers and staff to wear a mask when leaving their desk and moving around, including in our police cars and other confined spaces. And people are regularly reminded by their leaders and through our internal communications channels of the importance of keeping themselves and others safe. And of course, following that hands, face, space guidance. Mm-hmm. We've also had an open discussion forum running where people can bring any questions they have, to which senior leaders will respond. And we have changed our approach as time has gone by in response to the questions raised by staff. We've worked very hard from the start to ensure that officers and staff, of course, have the PPE they need, with the information about where it is and how to use it and how to get more if they need it. And we've also been running regular surveys and wellbeing checks, keeping contact with our people who are unwell and self-isolating. And we encourage those who are finding their working situations in any way difficult, whether that's in the workplace or at home, to come forward so that we can help.
Yes, and local people expressed to us how much they have appreciated the emergency services in general over the last few weeks and months, and key workers as well, of course. So thank you for that, Sarah. Thanks for that update. In the last few weeks, we've had thousands of students come to our area to study at our major universities that we have, that we're very proud of as an area. It has been a very difficult time for them. A number of them have been quarantined in their halls of residence, it's been not at all the student experience which I think they're expecting. Can you say a little bit about what the police have been doing, working with universities and with students to try and support students, please? Yes,
certainly, John. We do have dedicated neighbourhood policing officers based at several of our regional universities. And they work closely with the university leadership and the security teams and are on regular patrol across campuses, talking and building relationships with students and staff. When it was possible to do so, talks were organised on the rules that we all need to follow and our individual responsibility to follow them. And our officers remain there, available to support the safety and security of students and are readily contactable for advice and information. Universities have the authority to deal directly with breaches of the regulations, and they're able to issue their own fines. But our officers work in close partnership with them, providing backup where required and assisting in enforcing rules and issuing fines when it's appropriate for them to do so. We know the current situation is difficult for many people, and life is not, at the moment, sadly, what many students had hoped their university experience would be. However, individual actions can have an impact on everyone, and so we'll continue engaging, explaining, encouraging, and sometimes ultimately enforcing within university settings, as we do in the rest of our communities. But we do thank students at local universities who are following the regulations that are in place and protecting themselves and others.
Yes, and I'd like to also thank the students for sticking to the rules, as they overwhelmingly have been, and also just to say they are very welcome here. I know it's a difficult time, but this is a great place to live and study, and things will return to normal at some point, and you're very welcome here in this area. Okay, so finally, one last thing. I've had the opportunity over the last few months to travel around, see officers and staff, meet charities. One key issue which has been raised a number of times with me is about young people and drugs and the concerns that young people are being exploited by drug dealers via county lines and other methods across the area. Can you just say a little bit about what the police have been doing to address this challenge, please?
Certainly. Well, county lines is a term used to describe gangs and organised criminal networks involved in exporting illegal drugs out of bigger cities into one or more smaller towns in the UK. And in doing so, they're likely to exploit children and vulnerable adults to move and store the drugs and money. And they'll often use coercion, intimidation, violence and weapons. We have a child exploitation team. It's called Operation Topaz. And that is supported by a child exploitation prevention officer who is dedicated to raising awareness of and thereby preventing child exploitation, both criminal and sexual. This includes online grooming, trafficking and county lines, and she works extensively with young people, partners and professionals. We engage with young people from year 3 of primary school upwards, including within secondary schools, children's homes, youth clubs and pupil referral units across the whole force area. Through educational assemblies and talks and less formal activities such as time spent in local parks or running a cookery day within a children's home, we start to break down barriers and build trust with some of our most vulnerable young people. And this enables us to share our messages and to listen to their concerns and questions, dispel the myths perpetrated by some of these gangs and challenge the perceptions that young people may have about the police. We provide insight into exploitation and how to spot the signs, working within communities too, and talking to parents, providing guidance to teachers and staff, and advising individuals in businesses such as taxi drivers or hoteliers who might come into direct contact with young people who are being exploited so that they can see the signs. And we're actually at the moment rolling out awareness training to every general practitioner across Avon and Somerset. We want to reassure local communities that despite these unprecedented times, tackling county lines criminality remains one of our top priorities, and our teams are also hard at work disrupting and dismantling the networks that perpetrate this activity. We ask that if people who are listening today, who are watching today, have any information about people that they suspect are involved in drugs, either as victims or perpetrators, please do let us know, either by reporting online or via 101, our non-emergency number. But if it's an emergency, please don't hesitate to call 999 when someone is at immediate risk or when a crime is in progress. As I say, this is one of our top priorities and we'll be there to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. That's very important work. Okay, well, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are actually carrying out a consultation on how the police have been engaging and enforcing the coronavirus regulations. It's a difficult balance, but we want your feedback about whether they're getting that right. So if you go to our website, there's more details about how to do that. These are challenging times for all of us, but we will get through it if we stick to the rules. Thank you for listening. Look out for yourselves, look out for each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.